Hello and welcome to another podcast episode. My name's Loraine and I'm your host. And today I am going to do something a little different. I have an article that I want to share, and I want to basically describe a situation of how I ended up where I am today. It was 2020 when my partner ended our relationship. It was a very sudden ending, and I had no idea that it was going to end the way it did. I was obviously in shock and grief at how he handled things. And I guess the main reason for his outrage after he had ended our relationship was the fact that I had a different idea to how to settle things between us. He had offered me a 50% share in the sale of the property. And when I'd first read his letter that he'd sent in an email, I sent it back immediately because I was feeling very hurt and I needed time to think. It was 2 days after he had terminated our relationship, and instead of speaking to me or discussing anything at all, he wrote his financial proposal in a letter which started, "Dear Loraine." In that letter, the offer of 50% plus paying off another mortgage that I had in the UK, so I would have an independent income. Only that part of the settlement would not be paid until after I had left the house, after I had left the property. In another part of the letter, he suggested if I wanted to actually leave immediately, then he would rent me somewhere in Spain so that I could move out. I could take any of the furniture. Obviously, when I reread the email and the letter that was attached, when I reread this letter over and over, I realized that, hold on a minute, how can I trust this person anymore? How can I think that he's going to rent somewhere and I move out and still get half of the value of the property? I'm like, that doesn't sound very good. The other thing was, we'd never discussed me moving out, and he termed it in the letter as if I had suggested that I wanted to move out, which wasn't the case. So I did start to look at lots of places to go to, and with the money that was perhaps going to be made available, the 50%, and so I looked at hundreds of properties, and he even came with me to look at 2 places. And I thought he was going to do the right thing. But I had already been threatened by him, and it was not a very comfortable situation to be in at that time. And so, because of my fear of being basically left with nothing, which was what he had suggested that would happen, I'd be left with nothing, I thought that maybe I could put a fundraising page together in order that I raise the 50% that I could then use to pay him out of the property and then I could continue my life here in Spain. But my idea of staying here and my subsequent financial proposal that I wrote to him a couple of weeks later that we were meant to discuss in an adult conversation apparently was a terribly, terribly, terribly bad idea. And so, for the last 3.5 years, I've remained here in the property because of the legal advice that I was given when I attended the charity, which then helped me to obtain advice from a gender violence lawyer. And the advice was, do not move out of the property, negotiate. So, no, I had tried to negotiate. They told me not to file any further gender violence complaints against him because it would make him angry. So he was already angry. And the other advice I received from the gender violence lawyer was to negotiate. But the thing was, that's why he became angry. That's one of the things he said that I couldn't do. You can't negotiate with me, he said. You can't negotiate a gift that was never given. And so there's been a stalemate and a conflict that I never wanted in the first place, because I had written to his lawyer that used to be our lawyer. I'd written to say I'd rather cooperate, I'd rather negotiate. And that lawyer responded very abruptly to me because I had informed that lawyer of the advice that I had been given, the advice that the other lawyer had told me to file a gender violence complaint. And so that is how more conflict started. And it wasn't my doing. He had already sent me the email on the 5th of October to tell me that he was now going to proceed to court to have me evicted and I would leave with nothing. But before that, I had been threatened 3 times that he was in control, that I had to do as he said. And I've tried to reach out for legal representation lots of times, but seems to me that lawyers, solicitors that I've spoken with in the UK and in Spain don't seem to understand, don't seem to recognise post-separation abuse or how verbal aggression in a relationship can shut down a person so that they're unable to communicate effectively with other people. And regaining confidence and rebuilding yourself takes time. So in the now new world of AI-powered tools that are out there, I decided to try and get emotional validation from AI technology. And so my article today that I want to read is about how AI-powered tools can validate emotional abuse experiences. And so that is my topic for today's podcast. Hope you enjoy my article. AI-powered tool validates emotional abuse experiences.
empowering victims of emotional abuse. Here's this article, Emotional Abuse Validation. I asked AI to validate my experience of emotional abuse. Here are the results, including my take and experiences. Prompt 1. Describe how a woman might feel when she is betrayed by a partner after a long-term relationship is terminated abruptly when he confesses for the second time that he is cheating. Still worse, he is now in love with another woman. The AI reply. Experiencing betrayal in such an extreme way can be incredibly devastating for a woman. Initially, she might feel shock and disbelief, especially if she had no idea of her partner's infidelity. As the reality sinks in, she may start to experience a range of intense emotions, including heartbreak, the sudden termination of a long-term relationship, alongside the revelation of betrayal, can shatter her heart. She might feel like her world has been turned upside down, mourning the loss of the relationship and broken trust. Betrayal. Discovering that her partner has not only cheated, but has developed feelings for someone else can magnify the sense of betrayal. It's not just about the act of infidelity, but also the emotional investment he made in another person. Anger. As the shock wears off, she might feel an escalation of anger towards her partner for deceiving her and for the pain he has caused. This anger could also extend to the other woman involved. She may perceive her as a threat or feel resentment towards her for intruding on her relationship. Humiliation. There can be a deep sense of humiliation and embarrassment associated with being cheated on, more so if there were signs she missed or if others were aware of the infidelity before she was. Self-doubt. Betrayal can shake a person's confidence and lead to questioning one's worth and attractiveness. She might wonder if she could have done anything differently to prevent the betrayal. She may reflect on the past to consider if there were signs she missed. Sadness and grief. Alongside the anger and hurt, there will likely be a deep sense of sadness and grief for the loss of the relationship. Also, the dream she had for the future and the person she thought her partner was. Fear and uncertainty. The sudden end of a long-term relationship can create a sense of fear and uncertainty about the future. She may worry about being alone, starting over, or trusting someone new in the future. My take. I would say that all of these are valid feelings. Some women might experience more anger, for example, and react in such a way as to lash out with physical or verbal abuse after a brutal, immature termination of the relationship. I had the intuition to remain calm. I didn't raise my voice in anger or react to how he ended things. Prompt 2. Add on top of the sudden end of the relationship how the woman might react when he offers a financial settlement of 50% of the value of the property she is living in, and then 4 days later her ex-partner yells at her, "Don't fuck about with me. I'm in control. You do as I say, or I can throw you out onto the streets." Reply. The addition of financial manipulation and emotional abuse on top of the betrayal can escalate the woman's emotional turmoil and distress. Financial insecurity. The threat of being thrown out onto the streets adds a layer of fear and uncertainty about her living situation and financial stability. This can intensify feelings of vulnerability and helplessness, especially if she relied on her ex-partner for financial support during the relationship. Powerlessness. The ex-partner's aggressive behaviour and assertion of control can leave her feeling powerless and intimidated. The sudden shift from a long-term relationship to being threatened with homelessness can be overwhelming and leave her feeling like she has no control over her life. Emotional trauma. The combination of betrayal, financial manipulation, and emotional abuse can compound the woman's emotional trauma, leading to increased anxiety, depression, and feelings of worthlessness. She may struggle to trust others in the future and feel isolated in her experience. Overall, the addition of financial manipulation and emotional abuse can intensify the woman's emotional distress, make it even more difficult for her to heal and rebuild her life after the betrayal of a long-term relationship. She must prioritize her safety and well-being, seek support, and take steps to assert her agency and autonomy in the face of her ex-partner's attempts to control her. My take. Here again, these are valid feelings and reactions. Seeking support is a great idea. However, in practice, in my own experience, I discovered that support was lacking. Seeking help from medical professions did get me an urgent appointment with the psychology services, plus a prescription for tablets to help me sleep better. Only in 2020, I guess the services were a bit overwhelmed. The first urgent appointment was February 2021, and when I turned up, after waiting 4 months for this appointment with a psychologist, I was turned away. Why? I had no English to Spanish translator to help me. Prompt 3. While she doesn't fully understand the emotional abuse and the manipulation, the woman requests to discuss the financial offer that he has written to her in a letter. He has been angry in the past and has used verbal aggression, so she asks for the face-to-face meeting to be recorded. In that meeting, her ex-partner shuts down her side of the discussion. In the first opening sentences, he tells her, "I don't think you have listened to what I need, or maybe I haven't made it clear enough." Reply. The woman's request to record the face-to-face meeting demonstrates her awareness of the potential for manipulation and verbal aggression from her ex-partner. By taking this precaution, she is attempting to protect herself and ensure that she has a record of the conversation in case she needs it in the future. However, the ex-partner's response during the meeting further highlights his controlling behaviour and disregard for her perspective. By immediately dismissing her attempts to discuss her concerns and asserting that she hasn't listened or understood his needs, he's forcibly shutting down any opportunity for open communication and negotiation. This tactic is a characteristic of emotional manipulation, as it undermines her confidence and agency, thus making her feel like her concerns are invalid or irrelevant. It also reinforces his sense of power and control in the relationship dynamic. In this situation, it's crucial for the woman to recognize the red flags of emotional abuse and manipulation and to prioritize her well-being. She may need to consider legal advice to ensure her rights are protected. She may need legal representation in the negotiation process regarding the financial offer and other aspects of the separation. My take. Seeking legal advice to protect your rights is a good idea. However, being told by a Spanish abogado who is representing your now ex-partner that you have no rights here in Spain, it is not the same as the UK, can add to your trauma. To all women in cohabiting relationships, please be aware you will be looked at as a second-class citizen if you have not legally registered your relationship. You need to do this by either marriage or, in Spain, para de hecho, a legal status that a couple can apply for. You become officially registered as living together in the records of the town hall or the city council. Prompt 4. The ex-partner continues a one-sided verbal onslaught which makes her uncomfortable. He has rejected her proposal and has shut down her side of the discussion, and then he tells her, "You haven't considered me and what I want, because you know that's not generally what you do. Now I'm telling you what I want. I want it over and done with. If we can stay friends, let's stay friends, but I want it over and done with." He then raises his voice to tell her, "It's a terribly, terribly, terribly bad idea, and it's not going to happen." He is referring to her ideas in her financial proposal that he is not willing to discuss. Can this be considered emotional and psychological abuse of a former partner? Reply: yes, the behavior described in the scenario can indeed be considered emotional and psychological abuse of a former partner. Here's why. Invalidation and dismissal. The ex-partner repeatedly dismisses the woman's concerns and proposals, invalidating her perspective and refusing to engage in meaningful dialogue. By shutting down her side of the discussion and refusing to consider her ideas, he undermines her sense of worth and agency. Manipulation and control. The ex-partner attempts to manipulate the woman by framing her reluctance to agree with his demands as a character flaw, suggesting that she's not accustomed to considering his needs. This manipulative tactic is aimed at making her feel guilty and compliant, reinforcing his control over the situation. Verbal aggression. Raising his voice and using language like terribly, terribly, terribly bad idea constitutes verbal aggression, which can be deeply intimidating and emotionally damaging. This kind of behaviour is intended to instill fear and compliance in the woman, further asserting his power and control over her. Refusal to compromise. By refusing to entertain any discussion or negotiation regarding the financial proposal and insisting that he wants everything over and done with, the ex-partner demonstrates a lack of willingness to compromise or consider the woman's needs and concerns. This refusal to engage in constructive dialogue maintains a dynamic of control and domination. Overall, the ex-partner's behaviour in the scenario reflects patterns of emotional manipulation, control, and verbal aggression, all of which are characteristic of emotional and psychological abuse in a former partner relationship. The woman needs to recognise these red flags and prioritise her well-being. She needs to seek support and possibly set boundaries to protect herself from further harm. My take. When seeking legal advice, do not be fobbed off by professionals who are unable to offer validation and or legal representation. I wish I had known more when I was first seeking legal advice. They are meant to be helping you. When a solicitor says it is very difficult to prove emotional and psychological abuse, it is a cop-out. Prompt 4. Warning. Mentions thoughts of suicide. The ex-partner continues his one-sided verbal onslaught. He makes his financial offer in a slightly different way, but then tells her, "The other bit you seem to not quite got here is you," and then raising his voice states, "You do not negotiate a gift. You cannot negotiate a gift." Then he arbitrarily sets the deadline of 4 months, saying, "That gives you 4 months, not 1 month, not 3 months, 4 months. And by the 15th of January, I want this over with." Obviously, she is now in shock. She can hardly say anything and sits there very quietly listening, and a voice inside is saying, "You want it over with. I want this over with. I'll just kill myself, should I?" How can a woman get to these thoughts? Reply. The woman's reaction to her partner's continued verbal onslaught and imposition of arbitrary deadlines reflects the overwhelming emotional impact of the situation. Here's how she might have arrived at such distressing thoughts. Overwhelmed by emotions. The relentless verbal onslaught and manipulation from her ex-partner may overwhelm the woman emotionally, leaving her feeling trapped and hopeless. The constant pressure and intimidation tactics can create a sense of suffocation and despair. This makes it difficult for her to see a way out of the situation. Sense of powerlessness. The woman may feel utterly powerless in the face of her ex-partner's aggressive behaviour, plus his refusal to engage in meaningful dialogue. His insistence on unilateral decision-making and dismissal of her concerns make her feel like she has no control over her own life or future. Isolation and helplessness. The woman's silence and apparent acceptance during the conversation suggests that she may feel isolated and unable to advocate for herself. The lack of support or validation from her ex-partner further reinforces her feelings of helplessness and isolation. This leads her to question whether there's any hope for a resolution. Desperation for relief. The ex-partner's insistence on a strict deadline and his disregard for the woman's well-being may push her to a point of desperation for relief from emotional turmoil she's experiencing. The idea of ending her own life might arise as a way to escape the pain and pressure she's facing, even if it's just a fleeting thought driven by intense distress. Impact of emotional abuse. Cumulative effects of emotional abuse, manipulation, coercion from an ex-partner can deeply undermine a woman's self-esteem and self-worth. The constant belittling, intimidation and imposition of his will erode her confidence and make her question her own value. This can potentially lead to thoughts of self-harm or suicide as a way to end her suffering. In such a distressing situation, it's crucial for the woman to reach out for the support from trusted friends, family members, mental health professionals who can provide guidance, validation and resources to help her cope with emotional turmoil and protect her well-being. Recognizing the signs of emotional abuse and understanding that she deserves to be treated with respect, reclaiming her confidence, dignity is an essential step towards rebuilding her life in a healthier and more empowering way. Isolated from family and friends, overwhelmed by sadness and grief, fear and uncertainty about the future. My take. Women in these situations are usually already isolated from family and friends. The neighbours in the community may initially be a support network. The reality is that many people do not understand the impact of this type of emotional and psychological abuse. The survivor will be triggered by those who cannot comprehend the distressing situation, the victim blaming, the invalidation, the people who say, just move on, or go back to the UK, the injustice and discrimination that a survivor encounters while trying to recover and rebuild her life while still being tormented by lack of understanding of professionals in the justice system, re-traumatizes, re-victimizes the survivor. I self-published my story to raise awareness of these hidden forms of abuse. Post-separation abuse, betrayal and abandonment, what type of man? I published under the pen name Loraine. You can find it on Amazon and digital ebook stores. Thank you for listening to my podcast. Bye for now.